Hello and welcome to the Indie Bandits podcast. Today, Jimmy, Archie and I, Joe, have each been playing an indie FPS, and here's what we had to say about them. This month we've been focusing on a few indie FPSs, and well, here's what we have to say about them, really. Archie, we'll start with you. Tell us a bit about the game you've been playing and what it is.
I was playing Void Bastards over the past couple of weeks.
Can we please put a beep in every time Archie says the name of the game?
Games talking about it have been, videos talking about it have been getting demonetized on YouTube,
Really?
I've seen. So,
Because of the name?
because of the word bastards. So
Jesus.
I don't know if we'll have to keep bleeping bastards, but go
We
on,
should
Archie.
definitely keep beeping bastards out when you say void bastards.
No, just beep Void. Keep Bastards in.
I'll just put Naku Aku back in.
Yeah.
Aye. It's made by Blue Manchu Games, which, from what I'm aware, they're kind of a collection of people who came from, like, Irrational and places like that, and they made Bioshock. I think they just made Bioshock. I don't know what else they made. And this is a more of a... It is a first-person shooter, but it's more of a roguelike game overall. The mechanics aren't really based on like how good the shooting is, or anything like that. It's you know what a roguelike kind of game is. You go in, you die a lot, and you collect items, and you build your character up as you go along. And in terms of like story or anything like that, I don't think there's any real story to speak of. At least any that wasn't the game wasn't really presented to me. I think it's very story light.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't really know where to start with this. It's got this awesome art
How's it
style.
roguelike then? In what way is the game roguelike?
So yeah, I'll explain that. So the objective of the game is just to go deeper and deeper into space, it seems, and you do this by jumping from like space station to space station. Each space station acts as kind of a level, and from what I can
Right.
see, they're all procedurally generated levels, but there's enough variety to make them all look a little bit different. But typical.
Also, they're space
procedural-
stations, so you don't need to worry too much about them looking not weird because they've been put together of random blocks.
Yeah, kind of like that. And yeah, when you go in, it's the idea you've got to collect as much of items as you can, fuel, food, items. Items allow you to upgrade your weapons, your spacesuit and all that. And the fuel obviously allows you to do more jumps into space, so you can jump from level to level, but you could jump to one level, you can choose not to do it. And then you could jump to the next one if you wanted to and do that one instead, and might do that based on the type of enemy placement that's appearing in that level, because all these things are like kind of told to you in a somewhat vague way before you go into that like certain level. So for
So you can
instance, before
choose
you go
what has the best loot, basically.
yeah, it kind of gives you a hint of all that, small hints of all that kind of stuff. Like, and you go in, you collect all this stuff, you collect food, because when you're jumping from level to level, it depletes your health ever so slightly, so you can't just jump all the way to the end. There's
So it's survival a bit. There's a bit of survival.
well, yeah, a
involved
little
thrown in
bit. It's very survival light, though.
there. Yeah, just your health or hunger or whatever it is.
Yeah. So you have those. They have the food and the health, allowing you to last longer with each jump, to do more jumps, and then you have the items that you pick up, which allow you to build more equipment, more weapons, better armor, and that kind of thing. And essentially, you do that. You go in each level, you collect as much as you can, you exit, you jump to the next one, and you keep building up your character as far as you can, seemingly for the entire game. And you
Right.
die a hell of a lot, and each time you die, you regenerate all the way back at the start with all the loot you'd previously collected. But your character might have a new trait, for instance. One of the traits is like one of the characters can be really big, so that it's taller than the other enemies, or one of them can be like really small and fast. Or one of the better ones was that when you go into a level, you immediately know where all the loot in the level is, so you can just go get it and come back dead quickly. But there's a
Right.
couple of things within each level that kind of act against you. You've got limited oxygen,
Okay,
which
so
you
it's
can...
a bit survival-y there as well, right?
It is, yeah. But definitely more roguelike than survival. But there's things within the space station that allow you to replenish your oxygen. There's rarely anything on there that will allow you to replenish your health. And there's all these like different enemy types. Just do standard things. Some are faster, some are slower, some take like more health off you, and some don't.
Are there
And there's
certain
some more-
guns that are effective against them and stuff like that? Does it do a kind of like...
To a certain point, like for instance, you can get one weapon which like poisons the enemy, and obviously that doesn't work against like gun turrets and all that, because there's plenty of them
Okay.
walking around. But yeah, it's not the most plentiful of It's quite basic and straightforward kind of game. Yeah, I don't know what to say about it really. Like I thought
Would
it
you
was
play it in
okay.
short stints or like long sessions? Because to me it sounds like a short stint kind of thing where you jump on, do a few runs, and then just leave it, and then that's your lot kind of thing.
Yeah, pretty much. Like the problem with it is, it's very at the start. It's very grindy, and it seems like a lot of it's built around kind of just grinding out each of the space stations, the levels you go to get as much loot as you can, come back, build better items, and just keep rinsing, repeating that until you're a much more powerful kind of person. But in terms of a gameplay thing, I kind of generally don't like grinding very much. Like, I mean, there's some exceptions. I quite like Warframe, but I don't play Warframe for the grinding aspect. I play it because of the combat of it. In this, it's kind of like the combat's fine. Like, the shooting aspects are fine. You point and you shoot, and the mechanics aren't as tight as something like a Titanfall or a Doom or anything like that. But it's not really based around the first-person shooting mechanics of it. It's built more around the roguelike mechanics of the game. If that makes any sense.
Yeah. So does it have this problem? Because I've found with roguelikes, because you have like these permanent upgrades that make your character better, the difficulty curve is always like making its way down. Like the game will just essentially just get easier over time because your character just gets better.
So yeah, you have a bit of that. So like, as you go deeper, so the whole thing is divided into like depths of space. Each depth of space has a certain amount of levels, and the deeper into space you go, the more enemies that will sort of appear and that are stronger, or just more difficult to like go up against. Like, I think more like random events will start happening in the levels. Like, one random event be that there'll be more radiation on the level you're going into. Another one might be that there's more smoke, which will like cloud your view a lot of the time. And you get more of that to make it more challenging. But again, you are like, that's ramping up, but you're kind of ramping up with it. And eventually we'll get to a point where I think it just like plateaus and you'll be stronger than everything else and your health will be larger. And I think it's kind of, for me, the problem with these type of games is, and why I don't like roguelikes very much, is that I don't think you're ever actually getting any better at the game. You're getting better equipment, but you're not getting better as a player. If that makes any sense as well, like.
Well, yeah, that was the kind of point I was making. Where it doesn't actually, well, you can get better, and you might get better, and as a player, you might just naturally learn and become better at the game. But you might still finish the game without ever having learned anything, because if you play it long enough, surely your character will just become so strong that you could sit there and become a bullet sponge, and then one hit kill all the enemies, and eventually you'll make it to the end of the game. If you might have to. I'm not saying like you could complete the game without touching any buttons or anything like that, but there is this recurring problem with roguelikes where you will just get more powerful in the game whether you understand the game and its mechanics or not, and it doesn't seem to encourage like player learning.
Yeah, I kind of think that's one of the problems with it, and I do think there's like a incredibly repetitive element to it. Like, I'm not the biggest fan of like procedural generated levels either, because I think it takes away like real good game design out of the equation. Not to say that this game isn't bad, by the way. This game is good. It's just that I wasn't like massively in love with it. I just thought this game's fine. I enjoy it, but I don't have like any desire to go back and play it. Like,
right.
You know what I mean? Yeah, and I think because the way the levels are all put together, and the levels are fine and they're well structured, and there's enough kind of like artistic variety to kind of separate one level from another. But I do just think loops like that, for me as a whole as well, it's not just this game, I've seen this in other games. Like, I've tried to play Rogue Legacy recently, and that's a roguelike, and I just can't get in that game either for the same reasons of it's just too repetitive, and the gameplay loop to me just isn't satisfying. I don't think I'm getting better, and the challenges they like put up against me just seem like, well, this is just put there to make me slower at this point of the game, if that makes it. Yeah.
Just make the game take longer. To get more time out of the game will just make you die regularly until a point where, after X hours of having played this game, your character should be at a level where you can now beat these things, whatever they might be.
Yeah, and like, you go in, you get to that point, you die, you go back, you grind, you improve your weapons, you get to that bit, you go back, you grind, and you just keep repeating that cycle. And you might say, but Archie, you love Dark Souls. How's that any different?
I was about to say that with that exact cadence and tone.
Yeah, that's exactly what all of the listeners will be thinking.
You like Dark Souls?
Dark Souls, for me at least, the way I played, you never ever have to grind. And because the game actually takes all that away from you to prevent you from doing that, so whenever you die, you lose all your XP, you don't gain anything. So you can't just keep rinse repeating something until you're getting better and better. The game makes it so that you have to learn from your mistakes and you have to improve as a player to get past this bit. Because if you don't, you're stuck. And that's a really harsh way to do it. But I much prefer that because it's like, right, I'm the one who's shit here, not not the game. While this, I mean, yeah, like I say, Void Blasters is fun, but there's just points where you're like, oh, that enemy's a bit unfair, or like, how was I supposed to like expect that happening? Yeah, but I'll talk about the positives of it, because it does like give you that feeling of like, I want to get as much as possible from the levels I can. For instance, when you go to most levels, you can't see where all the loot is, and you've got to go find the computer data, which shows everything in the level. So you've got to quickly go all the way down there and get that. And with each level, there's one enemy that's hunting you. He was just on a path, and he really can't be killed.
Alien.
He's it's kind of like Alien, yeah. And he's just stomping around,
class. Sorry,
looking for you. It is good, because when you hear his footsteps going like throughout the ship when he's getting closer.
Is it scary though? Because you know my aversion to being scared at all in games.
It's not scary. But it's like, because the game's like very cartoony, like the art style of the game's like really, really, really nice. And when you hear that and you want to get all that extra fuel and all that extra food to go to the next bit, and you're like, oh shit, I'm gonna have to be quick, and you're rushing around, and you're like looking at your map to see how is it quicker to backtrack to go to your ship, and is it safer to do that than it is to proceed forward where this big beastie guy might be. And when that stuff happens, it's really, really good fun. Like, but
it's like supermarket sweep in a space station.
It kind of is, yeah. Like, but there wasn't. That's great, but it's kind of like, it's just there's not enough other cool things like that to make me think, oh, every time I'm going to this level, I'm kind of having this not new experience, but like I'm finding it like how to describe this? Like every time you go into the ship, it just feels like the same thing. Like I'm going in for the same reasons. I'm going to encounter different enemies, but the ones that are a threat are always going to be there as well. It's not like I'm going in, and for instance, maybe I have to be like super quiet on one level, or maybe I have to go in, I have to be like super fast, or anything like that. It's go in,
the approach
take as much as you can, and come back. That was my experience of it, at least. Maybe I was playing this game wrong, anything like that. But
I don't know if I subscribe to the idea that you can like be playing a game wrong if you're still like progressing in the game. Obviously, like if I went and played a platformer and just kept dying at the first hole and not getting to any of the levels beyond, then I'd be like, yes, I'm playing this game wrong.
Well, you're playing it badly, not wrong.
The idea of like wrong seems that maybe there's a right way to play it that the developers think is the most interesting and enjoyable way to play it, and you might have missed the way to do it, which is always my complaint with Dark Souls games, that just me as a person doesn't play those games the way that's fun. So then I can't enjoy it, and that's on me. But with this, it sounds like it sounds a lot like most roguelikes to me anyway. You go and do the same thing, and the game doesn't punish you for like not having learned a specific skill or having worked out a puzzle. It's not like the later levels will be like, oh, here's a tricky jump that you have to master or you can't get any further. It's like, no, you just try it again until you're tough enough where you can kill all the baddies. Yeah,
it kind of like death kind of just feels a bit meaningless in it. Yeah, you die, you go back to the start.
So
and
what do
then,
you lose when you die, sorry?
Dignity.
You don't lose your loot, right? You keep the loot.
You might lose a percentage of your loot, but it was never explained to me. At least I wasn't looking in the right place to see it. Like,
big massive text across the screen. When you die, this happens. Audrey's like, I don't know what's going on. Like, this game's ridiculous.
Yeah, you go back to the start. You lose your character, and your character could have a trait that you enjoyed, so you'll lose that. You'll get a new character who might give you a trait you don't enjoy as much.
Did the characters level up as well? Sorry, just
nope. Oh. Just weaponry and the things you collect. It's your guns,
Because if traits were unlocked, and if you were like playing with a single character for a long time, it would incentivize you not to die as much, because you're like, oh, this guy went to like 4 or 5 space stations, and after that he had a load of cool traits, and
it's
rather than just a randomly generated one at the start that I liked.
Like artistically, the game's got this whole like comic book look to it, and it looks great. It's got this really like flat colored, and even the borders of the screen are like white, so it gives the idea that you're playing inside like a comic book panel and stuff like that's really cool. And when you're going around and you hear the enemies like the noises they make, not their vocal noises, but maybe the sound of their footsteps, the onomatopoeic kind of stuff. is all spelled out in big kind of like comic book block capital letters when they're close by.
Right, yeah.
And that's really
old
nice.
Batman.
Yeah, like the enemies are they're sprites, but they're like highly detailed, like vector sprites or something like that.
So they're
not,
2D.
They're 2D. You don't think it, but when you look close, I'm pretty fucking sure they're 2D. Like, because they've only got like
a la early Doom kind of thing, where like the world was 3D, but you're fighting these 2D monsters that are, no matter which direction you're looking at them from, they're always facing you directly.
Yeah, I mean they have more degrees of rotation on them, but it does look really nice, and like they've only got like a handful of like frames of animation for when they attack you, but when they do things like explode, their animation will be like 3 frames, but then they'll have this like great like particle effect, which will be like all, you know, that last. And yeah, so like visually it's like amazing, and that's the one thing I'll remember about it. It's like more than the gameplay. Sorry, developers. The presentation of it is fucking great. All the enemies, or the majority of them, all have like English accents. The game's like, I guess it's humorous, but I never found it that funny. like I don't know, the humor it got, like, it was fine at first. Like, oh, that's kind of funny. Do you know Wallace from like Wallace and Gromit?
Yeah.
Do you know? Imagine if you got his voice and you pitched it up, like I think they did in the Wallace and Gromit movie for like the rabbit character. A lot of the characters sound like that. There's kind of like Yorkshire.
Are the devs from Yorkshire or
they're all over? I think they're Australia, UK, America. I think it's all a remote job. So
I was just wondering if it was like if it was a studio that was like based in the UK and it kind of like imprinted this very British identity on it, because there's, you know, there are games that have that, and it's like, and it's really cool. You know, for Brits, when you like live in a world where it seems that most games before you discover indies are all made in either the US or that's not fair, the US, Japan, or North America, because I know Canada has like an exceptional like game dev scene, and there's some huge studios in Canada because they promote game dev. But yeah, it's normally quite nice to see this, but you're saying it like, it sounds like it just kind of misses the point, and it's maybe it's British for comedic value, but not actually to give it any genuine Britishness.
Yeah, like there is funny bits in it, like the computer who kind of brings you back. He'll have some humorous thing. He's like this. He's like an iPad screen with like a little bowler hat on and like a monocle, as far as I can remember. And he says the odd quirky thing every now and again. But the enemies, like, you know, it's quite funny to hear like the enemies call you like a fuckhead when you're walking around, and they say loads of like really like horrible like things, like weird kind of like ways of swearing at you. I'm sure one calls you a spunk rag at one point. I could be wrong though. But I remember one of them coming out as being like, "Yeah, that's fucking weird." It's funny at first. 6 hours into the game, you're kind of like, "Oh, shut up." This is actually just a bit annoying at this point. Not all of them do that. It's only a handful of the enemies.
That reminds me of when we were talking about Disco, talking to that Kuno.
Fucking Kuno.
At first it was funny. After 20 minutes, you're like, "Shut up, man."
Sometimes it's you can overdo something. And
yes.
It sounds like that was like, it was good in a meeting until they realized that these like sound bites were going to just like be triggered over and over again throughout the game.
Yeah, it's kind of like subtlety goes a little bit further than, you know, exaggeration, especially.
I mean, is the game? I know you said like this gets annoying, but is the game like small enough where this like repetition in terms of like sound bites isn't too bad? Because obviously when you're talking about games like Skyrim, which are huge, and you walk past thousands of NPCs who are all saying the same thing, even though there are like thousands of, you know, apparently there's thousands, maybe not millions, but you know, there's a large number of sound clips they recorded for that game, and it seems that every villager just says the same thing, where it's like, "Good morrow to you," and you're like, "Is neighbor said the same thing?"
Or the god with the arrow in the knee, yeah.
Yeah. It's not that annoying, but I think having the odd soundbite trigger less frequently than maybe have just like a or someone like that would have gone a bit further. It's not that every enemy's yeah, like it's not like every like enemy in this game says something, but it does get a little bit repetitive after a while, just hearing the same ones over again. You're kind of like, "Oh god."
I think nondescript sounds would be better than actual like dialogue, even though it's not dialogue. I mean, just like utterances, because it sounds like you just hear them.
I sound like I'm being a bit harsh on this game. I did actually really enjoy it. I thought it was good. It wasn't great. Just good, and it did make me want to like try and get into like roguelikes a bit more. So, you know, it's changed my opinion on like a genre ever so slightly. I'm trying to think of some of the other stuff I did. Like, yeah, some of the more tactical side of it. So I said earlier, like, you can jump to each levels and you can have a little brief insight of what that level's like before you go in. And I thought that stuff was really cool to give an idea of, like, some of the items you might be after, if they were in there or not, and it would give you a vague idea of the type of enemies you would see in there. And it would literally be the silhouette of the enemy, or even, like, the full design of it. And it would say, like, more, some, many. So it's not like, I quite like that, like, oh, there's a lot of them, but there's few of them. You take your chances on that level depending on what that says. And you'd end up doing that a lot. You look at your ammunition, because your ammunition doesn't, like, replenish after every level. If you run out of ammo, you've run out of ammo, and if you like, you just have to go find more by continually going further and further, like, into the game, which is quite good. But again, it sometimes can be a little bit annoying where you're like, oh my god, I've come all this way, and now I'm going to die because I'm out of ammo, and I'm going to go all the way back to the start, only to repeat the exact same sequence of events to get to this point, maybe to have the same thing happen again.
I think that would annoy. I don't think I mean, obviously I haven't played the game, but just hearing you describe that sounds like that would be a bit of a ball ache.
Yeah, I think what helps it is the fact that the levels are different every single time. But again, with procedural generation, they're never that different from one another. They're like,
no, it's just the same corridors but in a different layout.
Yeah,
the like same Lego bricks but laid out in a different way.
One thing I loved, right? Some of the things they did like were really good. Like, you could go onto a ship or a level. Sorry, I should be a bit more consistent about me terminology on that. But ships or levels, and one thing they would do is you could go on and all the power in the ship would be off, so all the doors would be locked. You wouldn't be able to open them, and well, a few would, and you'd have to go through the ship to turn the power back on to just get access to everything that you needed to get access to. I loved that. I'm like, oh, this is actually, I've got to do one thing before I do the other things, but all the enemies are still active. Things would be, like, all the cameras would be turned off, like, because there's cameras in the game, they spot you, they send out security bots to come and kill you, but they would be off, and you turn on the power, and you just have to keep in mind that all those other things, like, that might have been off before, like, the robot enemies that might have been off, will now be on. So it was one of those things you always had to, like, factor into when you were playing it. You could lock doors in it, which is what I liked about it. That seems like a real trivial thing, but again, it's like it made you have to think a bit more tactically about how you could approach some things. So you have that big stomping guy who would be following you around throughout the entire level. You could lock him in a room if you wanted to, and you're like, right, he's out of the way now, and I don't have to worry about him anymore, and stuff like that.
And that's it. That's him
really,
done.
really
He
cool,
can't.
like,
He just has to like sit there for the rest of the level like a Burke.
Yeah, you just lock him in because he can't get out, and I like that. It's simple things like that make quite a big difference. It's like locking a door; they're stuck.
Yeah, it sounds like basically if this had more of these like not modifiers, I don't know, alternate like not side quests. I don't know what you call them, like these objectives. They would go a long way to making it less repetitive. Like even if these like turn the power on or something like that. If they could have something. Yeah, more of that, basically, more of these kind of like random quests.
Yeah, I think for people who like, because this is much more of a roguelike game than it is a first-person shooter. And I think for people who like roguelikes, this game is probably perfect for them. It's stylish, it's kind of cool, the setting's cool, it's funny-ish. And the loop is, like, I guess for them, good, but I'm just not the biggest roguelike fan. Like, I wasn't the biggest fan of Spelunky. I didn't like roguelikes very much, and this is the only roguelike game where I've played, and I thought I should give roguelikes another shot, because when this game works, I think it's really fun.
So how's the shooting then? If it's like the roguelike side, it sounds like you don't really like roguelikes anyway. So
the shooting is just point and shoot, which sounds stupid, but if you like, there's no eye in sight. Yeah, all first-person shooters for the most part are point and shoot, but I think if you look at like a Titanfall and a Doom, they just handle completely differently from one another. Doom's all about being really, really, really fast, and it's got tight controls, and Titanfall's about being fast as well, but it's just slightly different, if not a little bit hard to describe, if you know what I mean. This game's just like point and shoot, if you know what I mean. See that thing on your screen, point it and click. It's just a really just basic first-person shooter kind of mechanics, I would say. But again, I don't think this game's a first-person shooter, so it's not really a problem in that regard, because they work like fine to get you from A to B.
Yeah. Okay.
Fair enough.
But yeah.
Would you recommend it? And if so, to whom?
Yeah, I would. I would say, you know what? Not my kind of game. and I don't even dislike it. I think it's a good game. I did enjoy it. I did have fun. But I did realise when we were going to originally record this last week, and we recorded something else, I just totally forgot about this game. Like, I didn't even remember to go back to it. And I'd put like 6 to 7 hours into it, and I've heard it's about 10 hours long or something like that. And I just felt, if I didn't remember to go back to it, I was done. With that said, I still think it's worth a shot. Maybe not for £25 though. If you like roguelikes, £25, no bother, go buy it. You're going to have a good time with this, I think. If you don't and you're curious about roguelikes, wait for this to come down a little bit in price. Because I think it's probably a good entry roguelike game. Because it nearly changed my opinion on it, and I'm going to play a few more roguelikes to see if it does. But of every type of that game I've ever played before, it's definitely one of the better ones.
Okay, cool.
But yeah, it's fine. It's fine. It's good.
We'll leave Void Bastards there with a sort of a very almost middling review.
Middling review.
Middling. Not for you. There is an audience out there for it, but not a bad game.
No, not bad at all.
Okay. So, we'll move on to you, Jim, and which indie FPS were you playing? Was it actually an FPS, or was it a roguelike?
It was an FPS, yeah. Get ready for more middling reviews, though. I've been playing Dusk. David, I'm going to take a guess at Zimansky is a developer for that.
Maybe.
I could not tell you how to pronounce that name, though. Published by New Blood Interactive, and it is very much I'm not sure what the right term is. Love letter, maybe? I don't know if that's the right term. Homage to 90s FPSs like Quake, Doom, even Half-Life. Really, really good mechanics in the game.
Right.
Exceptionally, like it's all about the. Archie just mentioned it before with the whole Doom thing. It's all about your speed. You're running around a lot. There's a lot of ammunition being fired in this game. It's definitely not one for conservation of ammunition.
Right.
So in that respect, it's really good. But essentially, in the game, what you're doing is you are playing a character who has, from what I could tell, been recently captured and put in a dungeon somewhere. And you are trying to break out of that dungeon and then find out what's going on in a town that's been corrupted, I guess. I think you're playing as a treasure hunter. What I read, I did not get that sense when I was playing the game. It just felt like a guy who wanted to run around killing lots of things, but apparently he's on a hunt for some treasure. And yeah, it's extremely creepy. It's a horror game, I guess, except the purposefully dated graphics really don't make it that scary, so you'll probably be alright with it, Joe.
So like they're like undersold by not undersold. What's the word I'm looking for? They're kind of flattened by the lack of fidelity.
Yeah,
it's like going back and watch it. It's like going back and watching The Exorcist now, where you're like, yeah, I imagine audiences who've never seen anything like this before were probably like, holy shit, this is unreal. I'm terrified. This film is the devil. Someone watching it now in the year 2020 would be like, yeah, this looks like a really bad puppet show. But anyway.
But this was purposefully designed to mimic the look of those 90s FPSs, and probably the gameplay and the mechanics and all that sort of stuff maybe benefits from it because it's not a demanding game to run, probably on any system. So anyone could jump in and play this on a high frame rate and get the full high-speed adrenaline FPS action that the developer wanted people to get without anyone having to worry about what system, like how powerful like their laptop or computer was. So in that regard, I think it's great. It's nice that someone decided to go down that route. Obviously, an indie developer probably didn't have the budget to make some insanely graphic game anyway, but it's nice that anyone could pick this up, jump in, and probably have the same experience as anybody else playing this game.
There's no one has to worry about whether their computer could run it on ultra settings or whatever.
Exactly. It's really fast
across 80 different monitors, all in 4K.
Yeah, although I'm sure this would be a lot of fun if you did do that. Say like super fast gameplay. You run around, you pick up weapons, you double up your weapons pretty quick. It does not take long before you're sort of like double wielding shotguns in this game. It's just
so it has loads of dual wielding, which is cool as fuck. Even though I don't know how you could hold, like, having never handled a gun in real life. I'm still fairly certain the recoil on an actual shotgun is enough to
Snap your
like
arm.
dislocate your fingers. So dual wielding shotguns is probably not something you can do in real life unless your forearms are like tree trunks and like Popeye. But still, it's cool as hell in games.
I'm not really too sure if anything that goes on in this game is what you want to be doing in real life. It's pretty weird. Yeah, and it's some sort of like satanic, undead, occult type enemies that you're fighting. You know, going from like weird demonic creatures to guys in robes who look a little bit like members of, you know,
The clan.
yeah. And, you know, there's a lot of religious iconography in it. And, I mean, if you like that sort of thing, imagine if you like Doom or Quake in the 90s and you've got fond memories of it, then
very Doom or Quake.
100% jump into this game because it's not my like style of setting, really. But I still had a reasonable amount of fun jumping into this and just playing it. The other good thing is, as well, from what I could tell, again, only going off my experiences, the levels were about, say, 10 to 20 minutes. I say an average of 15 minutes long, approximately, the levels took.
Okay.
So it's very much a game. If you just wanted 20 minutes, just jump in and complete a level. You can definitely do that. It's that ease of being able to pick it up and then put it down. You don't feel like you have to put hours and hours into it to get enjoyment out of it. It's so kind of like immediately up to high pace action. There's no like build up to it. It's like the very first moment in the game is you get attacked.
Full throttle.
And you've got these hooks. I think they're hooks or sides or something for weapons, and you got to go around hacking at these guys for ages until you kill them, and then eventually you get a gun, and it just keeps ramping up from there, to be honest. Little bit.
This game sounds amazing. Like it really does.
As I say, its limits are purely just in the fact that like it's an indie game, so there's not a huge variety of. I mean, there's a fair variety, but it's it's not. I guess I'm used to like, and this isn't a criticism of it, but having the last few FPSs I've played have all been modern FPSs.
And they all look flipping amazing.
You get a little bit
Spoiled, maybe?
yeah, you get used to kind of like
ungrateful.
Yeah, you do. So I was going back to this. It was a lot more simplistic, but that's not a bad thing about it. I enjoyed it.
Does it keep like health and that? Do you have like finite health, or is it kind of like paint down the front of your screen? It falls off after a few seconds.
You have finite health because
Like,
you've got to pick up. You pick up various. It is like super a 90s FPS. There's like
health packs and
I'm
stuff
not
like
sure if
that,
they were
med
health
kits
packs.
or
They were like
whatever.
weird little glowing things on some of them. There's the old FPS trope of you're running around a level, you can't access that door until you've got the key for that door.
Oh my god.
So you have to
That's
go find the key and then run.
blue key.
Yes, actually it is. It's blue, yellow, red. It's all different colors. And then
Yeah.
you come back and open that bit, and then that leads you into another bit. And even though the game it's not linear. I mean, it is, but it's not. It's kind of a bit more open than that. I just jumped into it without any idea of what was going on, and I didn't get lost at any point. So I don't know how it does it, but somehow you're always going the right way, even though there are different ways to get about. There's not like you can't get lost. The levels are still like enclosed levels, but it's not like you're running down a corridor like you might have been in one of the old Quake or Doom games, where like the only way is forwards.
But in some of those, they had like flipping dead ends, which were annoying. Where like
Yeah.
the corridors were like that Windows screensaver, weren't they? Doom and Quake.
Yeah,
Like
exactly,
Doom
yeah.
and Quake was very much like that maze screensaver on Windows 95. Just
Yeah, no, it's a bit more. It's not that enclosed at all. But it is still obviously it's linear. It's an FPS shooter that's based on FPSs in the 90s, so it's not open world. So yeah, you've got to do a lot of get the right key, open the next door, find the next key, open the next door,
all whilst dodging bullets.
whilst dodging bullets, avoiding.
Is there much downtime? Is there much downtime in it? Because I know, like, when you're describing it to me, saying like you have to go find this key. Like, is this just like you're finding the key whilst still like pulling the trigger and strafing and shooting? And like, it's not one of these things where it's like, oh, you got into this room and now you're gonna have a little look around for the room for a key or something like that.
No.
It's whilst the battle ensues.
The only downtime is after you've killed all the enemies on the way to the key. It's probably, I think if I remember right, it's a fairly empty level going back to where you need to open the thing. So like if I've
Right, so
blasted my way
don't
all the
really
way to the no, I
respawn.
don't. No, not from what I remember. You might unless I've like, you might have missed an enemy and then come across them on the way back or something. But on the way there, it's all like action. But then once you get the key and go back to the other thing, it's often. But that doesn't even happen that much. There's a couple of times when you go to get the key and then you kind of fall through the level changes, like you fall through the ground, and then you're on another part of the level, and then that leads you back to where you were supposed to be before. So even the going back sometimes is a new level.
Yeah, I get you. Yeah, I get you. The sort of one way into a dungeon and a different way out.
Yes, yeah,
kind of thing
yeah.
Is
And
quite common level design practice.
there's boss fights. So that's a lot of strafing and shooting and jumping. The switches to flip on and off to open doors and do various things.
Lift bridges. Or
Yeah,
whatever.
there's power-ups.
Extend bridges.
And there's a power up made your weapon a bit strong. It like every single 90s FPS trope you can possibly think of appears in this game, and that's not a bad thing. It's an enjoyable experience. It's just I wish the setting was different. That's me being extremely picky about it. Like it's just not my sort of setting for a game. I would have loved it if this was set on pretty much what Archie was playing. If it was that setting.
Yeah. This had the sci-fi
Yeah,
setting.
if it was a sci-fi setting.
Instead, you've got the ecclesiastical kind of
The
Angels and Demons, Da Vinci Code-esque occult kind of doom.
Children of the Corn, Midwest America horror situation going on.
This sounds amazing. We do want to play this. I'm gonna have to play this after this.
It's
podcast,
it is like proper fast paced. Like you're just straight into it. There's blood and guts all over the place. It's
it was highly reviewed. I think this is why we picked it
I
out
can
because it's one
fully-
that we've heard a lot of rumblings on about.
it's one of the best examples of like a game having a very clear idea of what it wants to do and then just achieving it really well. Just like we just want to do a fun, fast-paced 90s FPS horror shooter, and that's it. And there was no like extra bells and whistles on it. It's just like, no, let's just make it, and let's just make it a really tight, fun experience without any bugs or anything else. And that's what they've done. Like the shooting mechanics are great. Yes, you feel like you're sliding around on ice all the time, but then that was like every 90s FPS, so it feels just like you're playing one
Does
of them.
it have the classic head bob where like your character seems to take like 40-yard strides?
Oh yeah, you're
Is the player character like really fast?
he's super
with
fast,
a lot of head bob? 'Cause
extremely
that was
fast,
very 90s.
glidey. You know what I mean? Like he is.
Yeah.
He's moving around like I don't know, like something unnatural himself, to be honest. So he's. But then that's the fun of it, right? These shooters are supposed to make it feel like you're some sort of like god in these situations, jumping around, blasting hundreds of enemies that are coming out of the woods and out of the floorboards and all sorts of stuff. And yeah, it's a lot of fun, and as I say, not in a bad way. There's not a lot, and this might be a bit of service to it, but I'm just comparing it to modern games. There's not a lot to it except what it tries to do, which is all absolutely fine. It just does it. If I'm being extremely picky about it, I want a science fiction setting. I don't want a Midwestern America horror setting.
I want never get streams.
I'm personally not big on that kind of like Children of the Corn.
Nah, neither am I.
Creepy back road. What's it like? Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah, never been that.
Stuff.
I was never into Doom or Quake either for the same reasons. Like I just never interested me. I prefer my shooters to be more time splitters than Doom.
Yeah, more Unreal Tournament. That was was kind of sci. Was Unreal Tournament kind of sci-fi?
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know,
it
had
was
some
sci-fi, wasn't it?
Futuristic blood sport.
cyberpunk.
Yeah,
Cyberpunk.
Doom was
type
sci-fi?
thing on it.
Doom was set on Mars.
wasn't it like
Yeah,
tons of like
but there was
demons and stuff?
Demons from Mars.
Yeah, but it's like that sort of like blood, gore, horror sort of setting of like you're being chased by these demonic entities or creepy entities.
Supernatural.
Yeah,
like sci-fi with supernatural. Which I
that's
don't
just
think, you know.
I'm not bothered about. I mean, you know,
Oh man.
it's just not my setting. But it was still fun. So I would thoroughly recommend it to anyone who is into either first-person shooters. Well, actually, anyone who's
Or
into
the occult.
first-person shooters, but anyone who particularly has fondness for the 90s style first-person shooters.
What are the graphics like? Are they like
Like
low
every
poly?
90s shooter you ever played, Archie.
Like they're not even like updated,
No,
are they?
no.
It's like from what I've seen of screenshots, it's like old looking as hell. Like if I said this game was made in like '94, you'd probably go, yeah.
Yeah, it's a bit more
At least what I've seen.
it's more polished than those games, and I imagine having not played any of those shooters really since the 90s, the mechanics are probably sort of upgraded to a better version, but
Refined.
and the gameplay and stuff, how the character interacts is probably like slightly more modern than those games were back then. But in terms of the look of it, no, it's right out of it, and purposefully so. So if you're looking for a game that you can pick up and play 15 minutes of relentless, bloodthirsty action, then I recommend Dusk.
I'm gonna have to check that out.
I need
That
to
game
be
sounds
paid from
amazing.
Dusk now if I've convinced Archie to go play it.
I like the sound of that quite a lot.
Yeah, I was gonna say it sounds like you've convinced yourself.
Yeah,
You said this was going to be like a middling
I did,
review, and I
'cause
think going back through it in your head
Yeah.
has kind of made you not like fall back in love with it, but just kind of, I don't know, gain some kind of appreciation for it.
I think it was just the setting of it. I just didn't enjoy. That's not fair because the levels are set out nicely and like it's good level design and it's fun running through it. As I said, I was probably just being a bit picky when I was playing it, saying, "Oh, I wish, I don't want to be in a creepy church right now. I want to be on board like a spaceship flying through, I don't know, an asteroid belt or something." But that's just me being really picky about it. The actual
just looking
game
for
itself
a
is
critique.
super polished first-person shooter, and it's got multiplayer, which I didn't get a chance to check out. So I want to jump into that because I think that's going to be absolutely relentless. I think it's got 16-player support as well, so that's going to be good fun.
What? That's just amazing.
Unless it's vaguely scary, and
It's
you know,
not.
then I won't
It's.
touch
I
it.
mean, yes, okay, it's got creepy elements to it, but if you get scared by extremely like, like low-res polygon men in hoods, then this game's going to freak you out from like the second minute.
Nightmare fuel. Nightmare fuel. No, I think I was having a chat the other day. I'm still scared of the Jurassic Park game on the Mega Drive. I can only play as the Velociraptor, not as the human, as Dr. Grant, because he's too powerless. The dinosaurs
Because he's
are
not
too
getting
big
chased
and
by
scary.
the Velociraptor isn't getting chased by a dinosaur.
At least but the Velociraptor, you're like, Velociraptor getting chased by humans trying to shoot you. You're like, yeah, fuck them, I'm fucking Velociraptor. Being a human getting chased by dinosaurs, they jump out the bushes and you're like, fuck no, nah, too scared. I still get jump scares off.
Well,
that
there's a
game, so I
couple.
don't
There's
know.
definitely a couple of. I'm not going to go into any spoilers or anything because I think these moments. After I played the game, I went and looked for a couple of reviews, and I was very disappointed that a couple of the reviews mentioned some of these moments in it, and I thought it wasn't that it should have had a spoiler alert on it because I think mentioning. Whilst I would say there's no like huge story in this, there is a bit of a story, but like it's not like integral to why someone would enjoy the game. There's a couple of reviews that mentioned a couple of moments that I thought were like quite creepy and really nicely placed, and I think mentioning that in the review is going to take that enjoyment away from someone experiencing that without knowing it's coming.
Yeah, well, the same with jump scares. I don't think you can mention when particular scares or certain like moments with like specific tone.
Yeah.
I mean, I always try and not mention anything that's like vaguely story related. Even like the tone of a given level is still quite story related.
Yeah.
If you get me, it's part of the narrative. It's not the story in itself, but it's still part of the narrative experience of a game. So I don't think you can really.
No. So I'm not going to mention exactly what they are, but there is a lot of what would you call it? Environmental storytelling. Is that a?
Yep.
There's a lot of that in this, which adds a little bit more meat to the bones of the story, but it also provides a few creepy moments as well. So I don't know if you are creeped out by the Velociraptor in the 95 Jurassic Park game.
The Mega Drive game. I think it was 95. Yeah.
I
No,
don't
I'm
know.
not creeped out by the Velociraptor because you get to be the Velociraptor. I'm creeped out as playing as the human because there are other dinosaurs.
You
and they're
might
bigger and
not.
scarier.
You might not like a couple of the moments from this game then.
We'll see how far we get. Multiplayer might be a different kettle of fish. Multiplayer won't have these like tone elements in it as much.
No, it
so
won't,
maybe
no.
I could play. Maybe I could just play multiplayer.
Or we just stream watch you play the
I'll play
game.
the single player. Please do. No, we do have to do that. Actually, just a short aside that I should stream playing scary games because I am pathetic.
As long as
like,
you go full into it, like curtains are closed,
Play in
turn
the
out the
dark.
lights, and me and Archie get to provide the ambiance, either through you turn up the volume on the TV or we get to play creepy music over the stream. I think that has to be the way it works. Just to get the full scare experience. See how long it goes on for.
We'll pencil that in. We'll have to. I'll want some capture and some footage. So I think all of these games will be streamed on the Twitch at some point. Every game on the podcast will stream at some point. So Dusk will be on there.
That's an
so
indie
we'll
brand. It's promise.
Yes, I know.
For
I
what
feel
they're
bad for
worth.
having promised that because it'll be me who'll have to flip and play it, and it'll be me who's caking themselves over the malice thing. I can play games with all the lights on and like in the middle of the afternoon and still get creeped out. It happened to me with Amnesia. I think I played about a minute and a half of that game in the middle of the day with the windows,
That's a purposefully quite terrifying game, though, isn't it?
Yeah, but I was only in it for about 30 seconds, and it was just the vibe put me off. And someone walked past me living room window, and I caked myself. I just saw a figure go past my window outside. I'm like, nope, and it was off. That was it. That's all I've ever played of.
I can't imagine you get too
Amnesia.
creeped out by that. You are so like OP in this game that like.
But my fear of jump scares and weird tone in games
Yeah.
is also really OP. So we'll
Fair
see. We'll see what wins. Yeah,
Yeah,
it sounds like
it's very
a good
yeah.
recommendation.
It is good. It's good at what it is. Yeah.
Okay, well, guess we'll move on to my game, which wasn't scary or in space, and it actually was not at all scary, so suited me to a T. I was playing Superhot, which is sort of for those who haven't heard. I think most people will have heard of this game, or even if they haven't played it, maybe recognize visuals from it, because this is sort of like an indie darling of shooters. But it's not really. It is an FPS, but the draw is that it doesn't really play in any way, shape, or form like an FPS. Obviously, the controls are the same. You've got your WAS and D, and you move your mouse around, click to shoot, etc. But the core gameplay is that time is still, and time will not move. Small asterisk in there. Time does move, but at like glacial speeds. But time is essentially frozen until you do something. So time only moves when you do. So if you stand and face an enemy, nothing really happens. It's like super slow-mo.
Can you fire your weapon when you're stationary?
You can, but that is like counted as a movement.
Right.
So the time it takes for you to pull your hand up and pull the trigger when you click shoot, that amount of time plays out in real time as you do it. So
Yeah.
as you pull the trigger, that time will like jolt forwards, like probably like 0.2 of a second, and the same for moving around. So as you're moving, time is in real time. So if you just run at an enemy, everything will be moving in real time if you're just holding down one of the keys like WAS or D. But that makes the whole thing turn this kind of like almost like weird game of chess almost, where you just you plan out moves. So it completely changes the way you play an FPS. And I really took to it. So it's framed in a very odd way. Narratively, there is a story. I think the story's quite good, a little edgy, a little like, I don't know, I wanted to say like teenagers would think this is really cool. Like I know 15-year-old Joe would be like, holy shit, mind blown at this, because it's very meta narrative and sort of like fourth wall breaking, and the menu for the game is like just a menu on an old text based operating system.
Right.
And then when you try and start the game on this, what is essentially MS-DOS, you start getting like messages from like a mate at work who's like, oh, have you tried this game? Here, I'm going to send this game over to you. Have a blast of this. And then you have this chat thing that's like, type your reply, and no matter what keys you type, it just types out like the message that the game was always going to send. And then you have this conversation with a mate who sends over this game, you try it out, and like you boot up the game, and all the visuals are like very minimalist. Not necessarily like 90s-esque, but they're sort of like low poly minimalism in terms of like the visuals. Like all the backgrounds are like completely white. All the enemies are these sort of like ruby red crystal people.
All right.
Who are like low poly crystal-esque looking people who shatter into shards when you blow them up or shoot them. And so it's very like impressive right from the start, and then it tells you, yeah, these guys can't shoot you unless you like essentially you can't be shot unless you're moving. I mean, again, caveat that with the fact that the bullets are coming at you. They're just coming at you very slowly. So there's enough time. You'll have a few seconds. Like, it would take them like a full, like, probably like 30 seconds to make their way down, like a bullet to make its way down a corridor.
Right.
It is like super slow. And all you do is like, you see the trajectory of bullets. You go, right, if I stay here, I'll get shot. So I strafe to the side and then pick my shot and I fire my shot. But you've also got to think, if I shoot this bullet here, but this character's running, is that bullet going to hit him? You know, should I aim where he's going to be or where I think he's going to be and all this? And it all plays out like very tactically, which is it's like probably what people who are really good at shooters are doing all the time, and I'm just not capable of.
How they see the world anyway.
Yeah, and it's very like being in the Matrix.
Yeah.
Like you're in the game, and you're dodging bullets and doing all this cool shit. And basically, when you get to the end of a level, it like plays back in real time. Mm-hmm. So you watch this like first person shot as if you were like really good at shooters.
Oh,
so
that's, I was going to ask you actually that if afterwards does it show like the moment afterwards? You said that would look really cool.
I don't know if there's a way for it to be like shown in like third person with static cameras.
Yeah.
But you do get to watch it back first person as if you like did it that quickly, which makes for some really cool like Keanu Reeves-esque shit. Like,
so are the enemies on a track? Like every time you play the level, they're just moving in the same positions each time?
No. The
Okay.
characters move around and have like AI. They just can only move when you do. So obviously, if you want to move around the corner of a corridor, whilst you're moving to the edge of that corridor, all the other enemies are moving around on the map. Mm-hmm. You might pop round. There's times where you like run around a corner and you're like, I ran straight into a bullet that was just like flying through the air. And didn't see, you know, because I didn't check my corners before I ran out, or because I decided to pull the trigger and that small amount of action accelerated time for a brief fraction of a second, which is enough for that bullet to, you know, move about a meter and a half into the side of my head. It's really cool. It's a cool way to play, and it definitely makes you as the player like feel like the shiz. Like, if you think the guy in Dusk made you feel OP, the fact that you're like, you know, looking at bullets hovering like a few inches from your forehead and then just taking a sidestep to watch them like whoosh past you and be like, yeah. And like, the thing is, you can look around and aim without accelerating time. So you can do that to your heart's content. It is only the actual like WASD and firing that advances time. So you can stop and pivot your character around, move the mouse around, look in every direction to make sure you know where every single enemy is. Then plan your next move. But obviously, when you've got 5 or 6 people who've all fired bullets at you, you've got to carefully like look at the bullets, which have these red like tails or streams coming off the back of them, and sort of like infer their trajectory from what you can see. Because obviously, if you move to get a different angle of them to see better which direction they're coming at or where they're going to land, you've accelerated time and their position's changed. So you have to have a big look around, go, right, where is every single enemy? What are they going to do? Now I'm going to maybe like take 2 steps to one side, pull the trigger, hope my bullet, and you just leave your bullet to go on its way. You don't always have time to like watch it and keep an eye on it. You just gotta hope like it lands. Maybe check back like a few moves later where you're like, yeah, that bullet's still going where I hoped it was, and it looks like it's gonna beeline it through that guy's skull. Class. And it makes for a lot of fun. And you think when I say like time doesn't move unless you do, that it would be like really easy, but it's still really tricky, because it's sort of like there's a lot of moments where it's like the game sort of pens you into like there only being like one right move, essentially, because you'll have you'll have this guy shot here, this guy shot here, and this guy shot here, and maybe the next immediate move isn't the wrong one, but it is wrong because sort of 2 moves down the line. I'm calling them moves. They're not. It's not turn-based, but it feels turn-based the way you play it out, and you know, you'll be like, oh well, I'll dodge this bullet to the left. When you're like, that means the next turn you're pinned in, where you should have dodged that bullet to the right, and you've already set yourself down a path of like you're gonna get surrounded and killed. But it's a fascinating and like
it sounds different, yeah.
Way it's
awesome.
completely different, and it's really cool. And they add some, and there's like melee stuff in as well. So you get there are like objects you can throw, and again they follow the same rules. So you can like pick up a bottle in like a bar fight type scenario. It takes a little bit of time to pick up the bottle, so it advances by like, you know, fractions of a second again. and then you throw the bottle, and then it's like trajectory sort of set, and then you can just leave that as you run off elsewhere, hoping that this like big bottle of whiskey is going to just like cane some bloke in the face, and which causes them to like drop their guns, and then their guns are like floating through the air like in super slow-mo, and you can like run towards the gun and just flip and catch it in midair and then shoot someone back with their own gun. So it like, and then once this all plays out in real time, like, oh, that was so badass. This was so like rewarding and fun, because all I did was right click to throw a bottle or whatever. You can throw your own gun as well. You can throw, so it starts like including you throwing objects at people and like doing all these like cool spins, and like throw something at him as he's like reeling back after getting hit in the face with your pistol that's out of ammo. And once you've grabbed his pistol out of midair, before his head's even like back in the like right position, you've already like executioner styled him in the forehead. And it looks cool, and with this like minimalism and the stylishness of the visuals, everything looks cool, it plays cool, and it's just like a lot of fun. And there's a few levels where you will be stuck for a while, because you're like, there is, not because it's pre-scripted, but there's just only like a seemingly right way to do it. Or for 1 second, you'll choose to grab a gun out of midair. That takes a fraction of a second, and that fraction of the second was all it took for a bullet to move the extra foot it needed to hit you in the back of the head when you weren't paying attention. So in some cases, it'd be like, quickly dodge the bullet that's about to hit you in the back of the head, and grab the gun after it's gone past you. And just little things like that can make it like quite challenging.
Yeah. You said it's only a couple of hours though, didn't you?
This is it. This here comes the big stinker. This game, as cool as it is probably only about 3 hours in length.
All
tops.
right.
It is in a single session you can play through the game. Now there are extra challenges beyond the main core game, and so if you do want to go back and just like use it more as like just a playground to mess around with these mechanics, there is that. But the biggest problem is it's a fairly expensive game. I think it's around the 20 quid mark.
20 quid for 3 hours worth of game. That's pretty.
Which is a shorter, yeah, exactly. So like pound per hour, you're paying a lot of money. Now again, as I said, this is just for the main story. Obviously, if you want to go and do this like challenges, and there's like all these different modes where you can go back through the levels and play it like katana only mode, where you've got to take them all down only using a katana, which is like cool as well. Also, that slices people into 2 perfect pieces, which is is cool in itself. Everything in this game is really cool. But yeah, it's sort of like it's definitely quality over quantity, which is what I want in all my games.
Yeah. Would it still be good if it was longer? Or do you think it would wear itself out? Like, because it seems like it's
I'm happy to go back and play it and do the challenges. But again, even though like challenges are still part of the game, when something isn't like touted as the core game, my head always goes, well, it's not really worth playing. Or like when there's extra collectibles, like I am not a completionist.
No, same.
And if the devs don't make it feel like you have to do something in a game, then I'm like, well, they would have made this essential if they thought it was really worthwhile content. So there's more than 3 hours in this game. Like, no doubt you can get more than 3 hours out of it.
Okay.
But even then, even if all the challenges like double the amount of gameplay, it's still like 6 hours for 20 quid, which is like I think the price point for it is completely off. I think
how much do you think would make it worth it?
I think if that game went down to half price and was about a tenner, easy. Yeah, I mean it's like it's about a quid an hour. I've played games that are half that price and still only a few hours. If you play a game that's like 3 or 4 hours and it costs you like a few quid, you're kind of like, yeah, fair enough. I mean, spending a quid an hour isn't really a lot of money when you think about activities that aren't games that you could easily just like, pop around the pub for an hour, easy spend over a quid in an hour in a pub. Like,
oh yeah. It just sounds like for an indie game, 20 quid's getting like.
It's the high end of indie game price
that's
range as well.
Yeah.
You rarely see indie games up that higher price anyway. And I mean, as I said, this is one that is like, regularly praised and will regularly come up in conversations. So it kind of like, I think the fact that everyone like will want to go play it.
It's definitely got a good reputation.
Exactly, it's got this huge reputation that precedes it. So yeah, even though it is 20 dings, people will pay that for it. And I think there's people who still won't be like I wasn't disappointed. I was like, yeah, all right, that game could have been cheaper, but I didn't feel ripped off. I think it could be cheaper, but I didn't get at the end of it going, oh, it's over. What? Like, oh, well, I wasn't angry like asking for my money back or far from it. I'm like, oh my god, that game was class. I wish it was longer. 20 now in hindsight, now that I've thought about how long I've played it for and how long it took me to complete it, 20 dings seems kind of steep.
Okay.
But it's like nothing I've ever played before, and that's what I want. So I'd much rather pay 20 quid for that than 20 quid for any same old shooter that I've seen 1,000 times before that maybe has 60 hours of loot crates and who the god knows on some multiplayer bollocks. Like,
Yeah, I'd rather pay more and have a more focused experience that's shorter than pay the same amount to play something less focused that's longer.
Yeah, and games still take a long time to do, and it's not like... I think there's a lot of games that are like, 50, 60 quid, where you're like, I struggle to bring myself to pay 50, 60 quid for a game, no matter what it is, even if it's got like 200 hours of gameplay in it, because I'm like, it's not 200 hours of gameplay in it, it's 200 hours of content in inverted commas, and you'll be sort of sat there going, all they're doing is just padding it out, because then that's how I work out whether it was worth me paying 60 quid for.
Oh yeah. I'd much rather have a shorter game these days, to be honest, than something that's longer. Maybe not 3 hours short, for me, maybe something a bit longer. Yeah.
Like what type of game is it? If it's like an RPG, then I want it to be super long. I want to be able to like explore quite a bit and get lost.
Oh, definitely. If this was an RPG and it was 3 hours and 20 quid, I'd be like, no.
Yeah.
Don't invest in this. Like, you'll get a lot more out of something with more depth.
Yeah.
But the game's length isn't its depth. It's the unique way you can play around with it in the using the mechanics. It's sort of, well, I guess created. Like, there is no other game like it.
Yeah, it's a cool concept for it.
It's an awesome concept, and it's a lot of fun. And even if you do complete it and go, oh, that was a bit short,
I guess
there is still more stuff to play. Like as I said, like that's just the core story mode.
Would Katana be a little bit similar in that you could pause time?
The mechanic was similar, but in Katana it wasn't pausing time, was it? It was slowing down time, and
slowing down time, I guess. Yeah.
Slowly.
Yeah.
Whereas basically this time moves relative to how quickly you're moving, essentially. So if you move in real time, then it moves in real time. If you decide to just pause and not do anything, then nothing really happens.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I think,
which is cool, yeah. which makes it a nice change of pace for shooters, which are often like quite high intensity.
I was going to say it's the opposite of what I was playing then.
Yeah, like I'm not going to sit and cry about games being too intense or whatever. Going, oh my god, like this is an experience that is too much for me. Like, no, that's fine, but sometimes I just can't be arsed with it.
Yeah.
I don't want every time I sit down to play a game for my palms to be sweating and me shaking off the adrenaline at the end of it. It's sometimes quite nice to just sit there and have something a little bit like cerebral, maybe is the word. Just something like a little like a thinky game, which is still sort of a shooter. Just a shooter that you have time to think about, where you're not like panicked and using like rote muscle memory to, put bullets between the eyes of your enemies from like 400 yards away. With like lightning reaction speed. This is one where you go, he's mid-run. Probably by the time it takes my bullet to get to him, he'll be about like a meter or so over to the left. So I'm going to aim my bullet there and see what happens. And so you click the bullet and then you go, right, okay, that seems to be going in the direction I wanted it to. Cool. Let's take a breath, have a look around me, see where all my enemies are. Okay, now this is what I'm going to do. And you sort of just sit and plan it out in your head as if you're almost like scripting an action sequence in a film and then trying to play it out. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you forgot that, that guy behind us is going to shoot, and whilst I made my path to like enemy number 2, his mate had already put a bullet in my path. Or I've moved back into the path of a bullet that I've like forgot about in all the ensuing slow motion chaos.
Yeah, it sounds
There's a VR version as well, which I really want to play.
Yeah, that would
Superhot
that
VR.
would be amazing if That's definitely the like.
No, it sounds
that
unique.
I would still, if even if the VR version was 3 hours, I'd still probably invest 20 dings in it.
Oh, and the VR's something special.
Yeah, I was going to
That's
say
like
that'd be worth it. 20 quid for
totally
that, because that's
like-
like it's the additional experience that you're paying for there, rather than just the game.
Yeah, but then you've also got to offset the several hundred you've got to pay for all your VR gear.
I'm assuming someone's already got that if they're buying VR games, though.
No, I'd if it was 20 quid for all the VR gear and the game, and it was just 3 hours, I'd be like, yeah, cool, 20 quid. You know,
Yeah.
Oculus Rift with Superhot VR for 20 quid. I don't care if it's 3 hours. I am taking that deal.
No, I'm still not. It's too much.
If any listeners want to sell us their
we are
Oculus,
we are open to donations.
but no, not donations. I said I'd pay 20 quid for it if they've. If anyone's got an Oculus Rift they want to sell us for 20 dings, I'll take that. I'll pay shipping. That's fine.
The shipment's
Yeah.
300 quid.
Yeah, eBay style.
So you would recommend it then?
Oh yeah, definitely. Again, I said like if you are hesitant about it, and it's not a shooter, maybe for people who not like shooters, people who are like looking for a typical shooter or FPS, that would be the one I would say. Like if you like love like twitchy shooters, and you know can pull noobs from miles away, then it might not be for you. You might still enjoy it, but for like different reasons. But if that's what you're in the market for, then this is not the game for you to buy.
Fair enough.
Like you are not going to get the same experience and joy as you would from any of your other typical shooters. If you are looking for something interesting, then yeah, this is like nothing you've ever seen before. Just it's worth the investment just for the unique nature of the experience, albeit very short. So if you are hesitant about it, then yeah, maybe I would have to say if you are worried about paying 20 quid for a game that only lasts 3 hours, then yeah, wait for a sale or wait for something, you know. But if you've got 20 dings to spare and you aren't bothered by the fact that you know how long the game is going into it, then you're probably still going to enjoy it, because you're going to have a good 3 hours rather than like I think 3 hours with Superhot for 20 quid is probably better.
So weird out of context.
Yeah, it's probably better than yeah, it's probably better than like the 6 to 10 hours you get for 60 quid with a Call of Duty game if you don't play the multiplayer. Archie, if you only play Call of Duty for the single player, then Superhot is probably actually more economically viable than a brand new Call of Duty game, because you know, even if you like the campaign and the story and how polished it is and all that crack on, you're probably paying about the same amount of money per hour. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? You're paying like a tenner per hour to play like a Call of Duty campaign, which will play nicely. Don't get me wrong. I'm not. But I think the cost isn't that different. It's if you'd be willing to do that, then you'd be willing to invest in Superhot.
I'd buy it for 20 quid. Superhot. Well, you know, I'm older. I'm in a position where I could throw me money around a bit more than I could when I was
look at him with 20 quid to spare. But yeah. If that sounds like your kind of thing and you're willing to spend 20 quid on a game that might last you just 3 hours, then it's like absolutely recommended. If you're going in thinking you're going to get a mad shooter, then maybe not. Maybe wait for it to come down sale, wait for an opportunity. But the second that goes on sale, that's when you got to buy it. I think anyone, if that goes down to half price, at that point, you'd be stupid not to just pick it up for a tenner.
Cool.
Sweet.
Shall we do a quick pick of the podcast, or Jimmy, Void Bastards or Superhot?
Just because it sounds so different and I'm intrigued about it, I would probably say Superhot.
Made your mind up yet, Archie? Or
Not yet.
Should I go?
Not yet. You should go.
Well, I would be willing to pick Void Bastards. Mainly, I know like your game sounded really good, but again, the scariness, even though maybe very light.
I think you're overestimating the scariness, Joe.
No, there's I've probably underestimated the scariness because I'm still going to give it a go, and then I'm going to have to like call you about like 5 minutes in the game now in tears, being like, "You said it wasn't scary." But no, and Void Bastards again has the like sci-fi setting. Like you said, the setting didn't sell Dusk to you. That was your like one complaint. I like eat up anything that takes place in any kind of sci-fi world.
Oh yeah.
So since Void Bastards has that kind of thing, I'd give it a go. And I'm not as averse to roguelikes as Archie. I don't mind roguelikes. I know they're flaws, but sometimes a game that you can just jump on for a few minutes and have a quick blast and do a run. Like, runs on roguelikes are quite self-contained, and it's a good option to rage quit, because you die and you go, oh, I've got a new character, I'll play with them. I'll do a run.
Play with them tomorrow.
I'll play with them tomorrow. Exactly.
What am I gonna pick? I am actually gonna go with Dusk, because that game sounds ridiculous.
Just to make it awkward as well.
Hearing James's opinion slowly change through his review was actually great. I was like, starting off like, oh, I wasn't too fond of this. Then it was kind of like, I got the impression James just like this game in hindsight more than you did probably when you were playing it.
I think I did. As I said, the thing that I remembered after it was the setting, more than the actual actually how polished it was as a game.
Yeah, and it sounds silly, and Superhot sounds class, but maybe it's because I've heard less about Dusk than I've heard about Superhot for God knows how long at this point, so I already had an idea of what that game was.
Archie is proper into all that occult,
I love
undead stuff.
Weird paranormal shit. I don't believe in ghosts, but or the occult or anything, but
I do worship the one Dark Lord.
I do worship the devil himself. Hail Satan.
Thanks for listening to the Indie Bandits podcast. If you enjoyed it, make sure you subscribe and leave us a review. For more on indie games and retro games, check us out on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitch. See you next time.